Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Thursday. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And I hope you're having a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the beautiful world. We are still in flood country, yeah? Yesterday we had a full day outage. So in total, we've had 10 days of darkness here within three weeks. Third power outage, third flood, 3 weeks. Interesting, huh? But anyway, we are here today. I think the weather's passing. It's dang cold though, but wonderful to be here. And thank you for joining me. And well, look who's in the background, Dr. Dennis. With Vampires of the Black Forest, we are absolutely vampiring the Black Forest today. How are you, Dennis?
Good. How are you doing? I hope you dried out a little bit.
It's been a while. Today, it's just, yesterday and last night, it was just constant rain, constant. Today, the wind was blowing a bit, but nowhere near like it was before. It's stopped now, but we should be having rain until midnight, and then it will be clearing up. So we got the sunny weekend.
My part of the world, we're having a little bit of a drought. So you're probably getting all the rain I'm supposed to be. But I don't want to wish for floods. Definitely not. I was talking to somebody not long ago. We were talking about the danger of flash floods in mountains, and I actually saw one time. And they are incredibly fast. You know, people do not realize how fast and deadly water can be in certain circumstances.
I know someone who in Namibia, in one of these flash floods, he lost his wife and 2 daughters at the same time. While he was on the rock ledge, they were in the dry riverbed. Next minute, flash flood, gone. So,
dangerous place to be. It's amazing, yes, that people don't realize in certain situations what nature can do. Sometimes it's amazing, but
exactly.
Yeah, we have an interesting little thing out for us today. Here, we're going to be talking about. You know me, I love cryptids, of course, and I like to every now and then I go to different regions of the world and check out, like we did with the Congo, the cryptids of the Congo. Today we're going to be talking about the cryptids of Germany, and it's a very fascinating place. I've got a few that we're going to talk about, but mainly we're going to be talking about one of my favorite all-time cryptids, and I am starting a lecture series on Saturday nights on my channel. And the first thing up is, of course, vampires. They are a fascinating cryptid because in very many ways, Shanti, they are real, but they come in many different varieties. And they can be, someone and or think and they can have those attributes. So the vampires are very fascinating in many aspects, and I've done a little bit of vampire hunting in my time, and definitely, and that's what we're going to be talking about today: the vampires of the Black Forest. Now, the Black Forest is situated in southern Germany, and it has been there for thousands of years, of course, and is a fascinating region. And it's very much like another favorite region of mine, which is the Romanian Carpathian Mountains. They're very much like that, too. But there are a lot of legends and stories there, a lot of cryptids. And Germany is fascinating in that aspect. And you've got Bavaria, you've got the Bavarian Mountains there. And in the Bavarian Mountains, we have something called the Tatzel worm. Now, the Tatzel worm is really more or less like a little small dragon. And some people say they encountered this thing, and it has here's the interesting side note on it. You might like this. It has the head of a cat and the body of a snake with legs. Okay, that's what a Tatzel worm is supposed to look like. And yeah, and they say that it can lure you into the bushes by making cat sounds, like, meowing like a cat. And if you fall, say, hey, was a little cat lost in there or something, and you go in there looking for it, and the tassel worm gets you. So that's another, fascinating one. And I've seen some woodcuts going back to medieval times, and it does supposedly have the head of the cat, and that's fascinating. And that's the interesting thing about the Germanic.
What does it do, the tassel worm? And I know my late fiance was Austrian. He used to speak about that. And that's very real for them, therefore, for, the legends in there. I mean, there's a lot of people who will actually verify that they see these things.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people that encountered these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they still warn you to this day. As a matter of fact, there's a village somewhere in Bavaria. I can't remember what village it is, but the village fountain is a tassel worm. It's made like a tassel worm, and water comes out of its mouth. This thing has been known for 1,000 years, supposedly, in the Bavarian mountains and in Austria. And the interesting thing about the tassel worm, though, is that like I said, it will lure you. It will, fool you into thinking you're dealing with just a regular house cat that might be lost, or you're looking for a cat. Yeah, and that's sneaky. That's sneaky. You got to watch out for some of these cryptids, okay? Because they will definitely.
What do they do? What do they do when they catch you, or why do they try and lure you in?
Well, they eat you. They eat you up they eat you up like your regular dragon does. They will eat you up, and supposedly, and they warn people. They warn hikers. Stay on the trail. Don't go off the trail, and do not follow cats. Don't the sound of the cat. Don't pay any attention to it because it's probably a tassel worm. That's interesting.
When you say it's small, how big is it? How big is small? Well, how small is
small? For a dragon, we're talking about maybe cow or horse size for a dragon. That's small.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's still big, but
it's kind of long too, and that's where the old medieval word for dragon was worm. That's spelled WURM, worm. But but what they're talking about is a serpent type thing. Yeah.
That's how you pronounce it, Dennis. Virm.
Yeah. And that's Germanic. It's for worm. It means serpent. But also, it's very much like the dragon. The very famous Saint George killed. Saint George and the dragon, very much like a worm, like a tassel worm looking thing. That's fascinating stuff. And then you got this is one I like. It's called the Nox crop. And that means the night raven. And this is supposed to be a gigantic raven that will grab you from the sky, that will come down and attack you. This is sort of very much like the North American thunderbird. But this is a raven, supposedly. They call it the night raven. And this thing is supposedly will get in your house and come out in your house after you. That's another fascinating one. You don't have to watch out for the bushes. You got to watch out overhead.
That sounds like it's straight from hell. Seriously, a night raven that comes into your house when you're sleeping sounds like it comes straight from hell. It reminds me of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that thing kind of has some vampiric tendencies to it because it visits you at night and comes after you. And what it basically does is when it unalives you, it takes your soul as well. So it's the soul sucker. We call some of these things soul suckers. They take your soul, your life essence out of you instead of your blood, which is the way some of these things work. And then you've got some fascinating stuff like the flame spirit, or they call it the fire ghost. This looks like a facsimile of a man or a woman, but they're like burning up. They're constantly in flame, but they don't consume. The flame does not consume them. They walk around with this burning patina around them. That would have to be frightening to see something like that, definitely. But they're called the flame ghost or the fire ghost. That's fascinating stuff right there. I've delved into a lot of the ghost lore of the world itself, and that's about the only place I've ever found one that's described very much like that. That is very strange. Um, and then in that vicinity, you've got, of course, another one of my favorite cryptids. You've got the Morbach monster. Now, the Morbach monster is situated very close to a U.S. base that is there. And people on this base swear to have seen the Morbach monster. The Morbach monster supposedly is a werewolf. And they say that there have been some people on this base that have been attacked over the years. And here's the interesting thing. The legend of the Morbach monster is that this man actually went into, he and some robbers, and this was back in medieval times, went in and robbed this man's house. And they killed the man, and they killed his wife and children and stole all their stuff. And while he was doing this, the woman, the mother who was dying, laid a curse on him and said, you've been a beast to us. You've been a monster, and that's what you will be from now on. And so that's how he supposedly had the curse of the werewolf on him, and he became a werewolf. And in Morbach, the legend states that there's a certain statue of the Blessed Mother Mary that you have to keep candles lit around, and on the night of a full moon, or the Morbach monster will come after you, or that will keep it from coming back. Supposedly he was put to rest, but if you don't light those candles, he comes back. So this is a very fascinating legend. And they say that they had these attacks, I think, back in the 50s and 60s around this U.S. base. And somebody found out about the legend of the Morbach monster. So they said, let's find that shrine and light the candles around it next time it's full moon. Supposedly that, here's what the legend goes. It says at the very end that to this day, they still light the candles. And some people don't know why, but the old people remember. This is to keep the Morbach monster from coming back. Very fascinating legend.
Very interesting. It's we've often discussed, these legends or myths or whatever they are, but the way I see it, there's so much more to it than just a legend. I mean, they might have added little tales and trinkets and things to make the story more tellable around the fire kind of thing, right? But I think
so. I think a lot, Shanty, a lot of these legends have a moral to them. There's certain things you don't do, and you have to, to stay on the right track. If you don't, then, it's sort of a moral lesson.
Yeah.
Warning people, this is the way you need to live, and if you don't, bad things will happen to you.
But isn't it interesting that a lot of those bad things actually exist, though? If you're looking at the cryptid world and the demonic world, or the monsters kind of thing, all we have to do is speak to some survivors to realize that monsters are freaking real, right? So
every legend and myth has a basis in reality. No matter what it may be, whatever that base is. And that's what, as a cryptozoologist, that's what we look for. We look for that truth that this stuff is based on. And that's very much like the one I'm going to talk about now. You will like this one. It's called the Voltinger. Okay. And the Voltinger is very much like, I know you may be familiar with the jackalope. The jackalope in the United States, I have one hanging on my wall, matter of fact. That's a facsimile of one. It's supposed to be a rabbit with antlers, okay? And the Voltinger is the equivalent, Germanic equivalent of a jackalope. It is a rabbit, supposedly, that has deer antlers. It also has fangs, like a wolf. It has fangs. And it has wings of a pheasant and the body of a squirrel. So this is a really mixed up cryptid here. And this is one that they believe, and they will tell their children in that vicinity, be good, or the Voltinger will come after you. So the Voltaire is a very interesting and very comical kind of a cryptid. Definitely, that's interesting. But
Wow.
you know, when you get into the vampire type legends, and that's what we're going to talk about today, the vampires of the Black Forest, and we're going to be talking about Nazis and World War II here shortly. Yes, this is a Nazi connection with vampires, okay? And this is a fascinating story, but when you get into things like that, you run into a lot of folklore, like the Lili. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Lili, and that is spelled Lele in Romania. They are vampire women that dance in the forest, and they say that if you're, especially if you're a male and you happen to be in the forest and you run into a group of women dancing out in the forest, it's not a good idea to dance with them. Supposedly, they will try to lure you in, and you will dance until you die with a Lily. And they are like fairy women, but yet they're also like vampires because they're draining you of your life while you're
Mm.
with them. And they say if then they're like dressed in white gowns, beautiful white dresses. And if you pull their dresses up a little bit, you will see they do not have human feet. They have the feet of deer. And there's a very much like what we used to call the old kind of the sirens of the forest. They were,
Yeah.
forest spirit type things. And there's another type very much like that in Scotland. They are called the Banshee, much like the Banshee, but Banshee. There's another group of women you definitely don't want to go dancing with, okay? And they will try to lure you in, especially if you're male. And so this is another thing I say, like a cautionary tale, about dealing with strangers. Be very careful about strangers. You don't know what they're up to. They're usually up to bad things. You definitely don't want to hook up with these guys. It's not a good night to go dancing with them. Definitely.
I like your comment here, Rui. Sorry to interrupt you, Dennis. The TikTok dancing nurses, absolutely. I mean, isn't that interesting? When we see that, we see how all of this stuff correlates. Wow.
And they're very much. That's what fascinates me about these. They have that very much vampire quality to them. And
Yeah.
then in Scotland you have, I mean, in Ireland you have the Derek Dhu. The Derek Dhu, and that's Celtic for that means red blood. She is out for revenge. Basically, she was supposedly done very bad. She was forced into a marriage that she did not want, and it broke her heart. And the man who she was married to, her father made her marry. Back in the day, parents could set up marriages for their children, and he forced her into this marriage because the man had some money. And she didn't get to marry the man that she really loved, and it broke her heart, broke her spirit. And eventually, she unalived herself because of it. And he was very cruel. The man she had very cruel. He beat her, was mean to her, and uh, she unalived herself. But she came back, and she came back for revenge. So now they said they warn men in Ireland, if you're out in the woods at night or you're along the road at night, and this beautiful red-haired woman comes up to you, you might better, go the other way. Because it may be the Dervish Dhu. She will lure you out into the woods and drain the blood out of you. And this is her form of revenge against males that did her wrong.
Yeah.
Fascinating story. Yeah.
It's very fascinating because that kind of also goes in line with the sirens, doesn't it? When you're looking at that whole siren archetype, it's very much
But
using
that's the,
sexuality or sensuality to get
yeah,
what you want and then
the sirens.
manipulate.
The sirens are what we would basically call spiritual vampire type things. And
Yeah.
if you remember the story of Ulysses, he told his men, they had to plug their ears with wax. And he told his men, I want to hear the song of the sirens, because they would sing, they'd be on the shore and they would lure your ship in and destroy your ship and drown you. And so he said, I want to hear the song of the sirens. Tie me to the mast, and no matter what I do or say, do not turn me loose. And so Ulysses did that, and it almost drove him insane because they sung of home and Penelope, who he was trying to get back to after the Trojan War. It took him 10 years to get home, the poor guy. It took him 10 years. And the gods kept preventing him. Every time he would do one thing, they would made him a castaway and all kinds of stuff. And it almost drove him insane because the sirens were touching his soul with their songs. And so you call something like that sort of like spiritual vampires. They're feeding off you spiritually in a way.
Of course they do, but isn't that where it begins though? It starts with that. And I mean, because spiritually, if you open to that sort of thing, whether they get you spiritually or whether they're able to puncture their teeth into your flesh and draw your blood in that way, it's still a spiritual doorway that's opened, that's let that in. To me, it's just different types of energy they're harvesting, either blood or spiritual or emotional, whatever,
That's very true. And like that, they have to open the door to you in order to be able to do that. That's why vampires supposedly are supposed to have to be invited in. You have to open the door, and you can do it not just physically like a door in your house, but also spiritually by opening the door of your consciousness to them or your spirit. And when that happens, bad things will go down. Usually,
exactly. And I think it starts there. It starts with that luring, whatever it is, that manipulation, the kind of, especially if you're looking at the siren type energy that's trying to get back at men. How does a woman get back at a man? You're not going to go necessarily. I mean, you might just go and throw acid in his face in the pub, but that's really going to get you nowhere and arrested very quickly. So what do? You start playing your feminine wiles, right? You start using all the manipulation tactics. I mean, it's interesting because I've been in Thailand. There's something that comes up on my screen called Thailand Tales, and it's very, very interesting because having lived there as well, you see how they're known as Farangs. We're all known as Farangs, foreigners. We're called Farangs in Thailand, okay? But it's par for the course. You see these old retired men, over 50, over 60, okay, who go there and they meet these young girls in their 20s and 30s, and they get conned out of every last penny, many of them, because the Thai law is very much in favor of Thai people. So if you want to build a house there, it's got to go on her name. So of course you're putting everything on her name.
Thailand is really a mecca for pedophiles. They go there because of the young girls. Yeah. I mean, and if you ever hear a man say, "Oh, I would like to go live in Thailand," you got to wonder about that guy, okay? Because
especially certain places you go to in Thailand. Bangkok, of course, is the free for all, but there's certain places like Pattaya. I lived quite close to Pattaya, and I had to go there occasionally to renew my passport, my visa, I mean. And I got to tell you, that place is wild. I mean, so anyone who says, "Oh, I just wanted to go to Pattaya and check it out," I'm going, no. Then you go to a place like I went to that's quiet, quite rural. You don't get that stuff there, or little of it anyway. But I guess, what I'm saying is, as well, Thailand, there's a big ladyboy community there. They call the ladyboys the intersex or the hermaphrodites. Okay.
Oh yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
That is a very, very big attraction. You have no idea. Lots of guys get caught out because they think they're meeting a girl. Meanwhile, they later find out she's not a girl. Lots of that, but also they go there for that. But the luring, it's like those Thai girls, not just Thai, I think the Asian girls, because you hear about a lot with Filipinos and stuff like that as well. And I mean, they've got this ability to lure these older men always white men. I've never seen any other, always white guys, okay, driving with these young girls on the back of their bikes. And they think they're like the bee's knees, arrogant as hell, I got to tell you. and time again, they get swatted in their wallets, boy, by these girls. And they're always working for some kind of a gang. So they'll usually have someone there that says, you got to target that, you got to bring the money, ask for that. My father's business is going under. I need, you know what I'm saying? It's like absolute luring of the money. I saw guys see their bums more times than once there, and you hear about it as well. So it's very interesting, but the question I would say is, why are these men open to that? Why are these men so desperate for a young, what seems to be submissive girl who will satisfy your sexual needs? I mean, that we know is the main reason. And
to me,
why are
it is downright demonic in many ways, okay, because it's so perverted. It's the perversion of it. It's the taboo part of it that I think lures a lot of these people to do that. It's what I call the Sodom and Gomorrah mindset type thing. If it's dirty and it's not right and it's very unmoralistic, they love it. That's the more they like about it. It's the lure to them for that. And, that's very much like, and in my lecture, I'm going to be talking about Saturday night. I call the vampire infection of the undead, the vampire network. In a lot of large cities, you've got a concentration of these vampire cults and gangs and all that. And we're talking about what I call human vampires. Okay, they are people who really want to live like vampires, although they're not the traditional vampire that Hollywood tells us about. But the interesting thing about on the flip side that we were talking about was the male vampires and women. Women are lured in by the very sexual aspects of the men vampires, who can perform that sort of glamour we talked about, that power they have to touch your mind and get you to see them the way they want you to see them. And so, and they may not look like that in real life, but when you see them, when you're under the glamour, you see them in a different way. And they are very, sexy, very, very appealing. That's the way they want. And they may not look like that in real life, but that's the way they get you to see them. And we were talking about this the other day. It's very much like a woman putting on makeup, okay? And I'm not getting down on the gals on this, okay? Because makeup is a wonderful thing, definitely.
I agree. Listen. When you're sitting in front of the camera, trust me, you want your eyeliner, your mascara, your lip gloss.
Yeah, well, makeup is messing with reality, okay? Let's put it that way, okay? And if I were to make myself up to look like a clown or something, the makeup on me has changed the reality of the way you see me. And that's what these vampires are doing to people, but they're doing that with your mind. They're not using makeup. But that's what the glamour is. It is sort of a magical ability to influence your reality. And magic, we've talked about that before. And magic, and the vampires deep into magic, black magic, if you want to call it that. Definitely, it's evil magic. That changes your reality. That changes the reality itself to a certain degree. And of course, makeup is doing that too. Okay, when a woman puts on makeup, it changes her reality to the way she wants to appeal or to appear to other people. You got to remember, this is a power that's very old in human history, whether it's the male or the female doing it, okay, whatever the sense. And the vampire utilizes this. And, as we know in our modern day society, sex sells, just like we're talking about with Thailand. There's a big sex business in Thailand. There are sex businesses everywhere. And sex sales, you make money off of it. You traffic people with it, so on and so on. And large crime organizations know this well. They're deep into this stuff. So, of course, the vampires would not pass that up either. Definitely not,
Absolutely. And I mean, they know exactly who to harvest and how to harvest it. They know. They're professionals. I mean, when I say professionals, but like masters of siphoning energy.
The more perverse the human spirit becomes, the more dangerous it is also spiritually. not only to itself but the people around it as well. It's not, it's like that old saying about you drop a rock in a pond, you got a lot of ripples from it, and that's definitely what happens in society with this kind of a thing. And vampires are definitely deep into this stuff. And if they can lure you in either with the glamour or their lifestyle, and a lot of people say, I like that lifestyle, I want to live like that. That's the human vampires. And they are just as dangerous in many aspects as the supernatural type vampires. That's the fascinating part. But the vampires we're going to talk about today are definitely connected with the Nazi part of World War II back in the day. And this happened in the Black Forest back in World War II, at the very beginning of World War II. Hitler had unprecedented power in Germany, and he was almost godlike in some ways to these people.
Mm.
And having I'm kind of an amateur historian. I have actually watched some of his speeches. Although I don't speak German, I had to get a lot of translation on it. But it wasn't what he was saying. It was the way he was saying it. But also it was what really struck me is the way the power that he had was psychological in many aspects. He was appealing to what these people wanted to hear, and that's the way con men and stuff always do that too. They flim you, and they get you to hear or believe what you want to believe, kind of a thing. They appeal to that. Yeah. And he almost, though, Shanty, watching this guy, had almost like a supernatural talent for this, and I guarantee you without a doubt he was demonically inclined, without a single doubt on that. Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's where that was coming from. A lot. You got to say, hey, this guy had a very dark, deep spirit about him that he was drawing off of when he came to that. But like I said, he had unprecedented power, and so did the people around him, like Goring and some of the others. And that's the story today about Goring. Goring, who was his right-hand man, and I remember one instance where they actually signed a treaty with Poland, and they were walking out of the building, and Goring and Hitler were laughing about it, because it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. They didn't. That's the way they dealt. That's the way they play cards, and they were laughing about it. And so they were very tight. They were very, not just power wise, but they were friends in a very weird, twisted sort of way. And Goring was a big hunter. He liked to hunt. He killed animals for the thrill of the kill. Okay, this is what this guy was. And he was a very egotistical man. So he and Hitler went together very well. And they had a lot of touch points they could connect with. But he was a big hunter. He loved to hunt. And the Black Forest had a lot of animals at that time. You had wolves, you had a lot of deer, pheasants, stuff like that. And he hunted. He wanted to take, what his plan was, to take the Black Forest, Goring did, and make it his own natural hunting preserve. Okay. And we're talking about thousands of acres of land here with people living in them. Okay. But he didn't care about that. He wanted what he wanted. So he had a small battalion of soldiers go into the Black Forest and drive these people out, burn their homes, drive them out. Now we're talking about his own people now. These are German people in the Black Forest. Okay. And this is at the very beginning of World War II, before they started going out trying to conquer Poland and places like that. They were at that time consolidating their power inside of Germany. Okay. That's what was going on. So he said, I want this place for my own personal preserve, and what he wanted, Hitler gave him, because they that was the kind of friendship they had, the kind of system they worked on. And the one thing, when you draw back from history and look, Shanty, at the Nazi system, you got to kind of admire it in a way. I know this sounds bad to say that, because it was inherently evil, without a doubt. Yeah. But the system was set up in such a way. It was a very meticulous system. Okay. and it was run very well. And evil does that. Evil has to be well organized. It has to be a well-oiled machine to work the way it is, especially when it gets rid of millions of people to do that. And a lot of that was on the inside of Germany. They went on further out, of course, into Poland and in different areas where the Jewish populations were eventually. But it all began in Germany. We have to remember that. That's where it began, and they consolidated their power. So he sent these soldiers, this units of soldiers, I think it were 2 units of soldiers that he sent into the Black Forest. And he said, I want the Black Forest, drive the people out, kill them if necessary. Kill them if necessary. But I want this place. And so they began to do that. And there was one man who stood in their way. His name was Hans, I think his name was Hans Gruberel. Gruberel was his name. He was an innkeeper in the very center of the Black Forest. He had an inn. There was like a little small village. And he stood up to him. Oh, no, these people, this is where these people live for thousands of years. This is their farms, their livelihood. And, you being from a farm girl, you know what I'm talking about in some ways. The farm was your way to exist. Without your farm, you would die. I mean, you had to raise your crops, feed your family, raise your animals, whatever you had to do. And he was taking these people's livelihoods away from them. They didn't care if he killed them or not. He wanted what he wanted, and he was going to get it no matter what. That's evil. That's the way evil works. Definitely. So
Control.
This one man stood up to him. Said, "Oh, this is wrong. Don't do this. You're driving people out of the Black Forest and all that." And he said, "There will be a price to pay for this." And so Goring told him, he said, well, he listened to the man. He said, well, let me make a decision on what you talked about, and I'll come back tomorrow with my decision. Let me think about it. So the next day he came back and gave Gorbel his decision. They left him hanging upside down like a cross on his inn door and killed him like that. That was Goring's answer. And then Goring gave the orders, be more vicious, drive them out, kill them all if you have to, but I want this place. And I want it very soon. So they began to double their efforts on the people of the Black Forest. But there was the people of the old people of the forest warned them, say, hey, you're going to pay a price for this. You don't mess with the Black Forest. There are certain things in the Black Forest that have been here for thousands of years, and they're not going to like what you're doing here. But the Nazis laughed at them, until the killings began. And when nightfall, every sundown, more and more soldiers in the units would disappear one by one out into the forest somewhere. And later on, they would find their bodies, and their throats would be ripped open, and they would have no blood in their bodies left in them. And the old folks said it's the vampires of Schwarzwald. The vampires of the Black Forest. They're getting their revenge. You're messing with their land. You're messing with their properties. Said they were content when once in a great while we'd let them have a peasant girl or something like that. But now you've come in and threatened them, and now you're going to really pay for it. And sure enough, soldier after soldier, day after day at sundown, would go missing. And finally, Goring couldn't ignore it anymore. And he said, what's going on here? The reports started coming back to him. Men are being found with their throats ripped open. Some of them insane, wandering in the forest, screaming about vampires. What's going on here? This began to really bother Goring. It really scared him, and he halted his operation, supposedly, and said, pull them back out of the Black Forest. He began to pull his men out, what was left of them, out of the Black Forest. Now, supposedly this is in the meticulous Nazi records that were not kept. In other words, Goring covered it up. Don't record this, what's happened, because it was a blow to his ego, okay, because he couldn't get what he wanted. And Hitler finally told Goring, forget about this for now. We've got to concentrate on the war that's coming, because he was about to invade Poland because that treaty was worthless. He was going to invade Poland first. The Tiger tanks were going to ride in there and do what they want to do. So that interrupted his operation in the Black Forest. But it's very interesting that supposedly a United States soldier found out about this after, as the war was going on, the very latter days of the war, when we started penetrating deeper into Germany. One of the soldiers that was involved in the operation in the Black Forest told the story to an American soldier who told it, who was told this by the soldier that was a German prisoner of war. And he said that, we had to pull back out of the Black Forest, and they said they covered it up. They didn't want anybody to know about what happened there, because there's, Hitler told Goring, this is you're talking about the stories of my childhood, of the things I've heard about vampires and all that. He said, we are men, we're not children. We're not going to listen to that kind of stuff. I'm not going to deal with it. And he said, cover it up and forget about it. And that's supposedly what happened, except this soldier knew about it, and he told the United States soldier about it. And the soldier told his captain, and he said, well, the captain said, that's a very interesting story, but it sounds like something somebody made up or whatever, And he said, but we'll make a note of it and send it to Washington. And later on, that the soldier that took the deposition was going to go back and ask some more questions of the German soldier that was the prisoner. And he went back next day and said, I need to talk to this man. And he said, well, you can't. We found him dead the other night in his cell. His throat was ripped open. And so that's supposedly where the story ends of the vampires of the Black Forest. And the American soldier years later was telling the story to someone, and he said, that was my report. And it got covered up. It got lost somewhere in Washington. But I heard the story. I know what happened in the Black Forest and what they tried to cover up and what Hitler didn't want to talk about and what Goring was embarrassed by. The operation that failed in the Black Forest because of the vampires. And the guy was asking the old soldier, well, what about the vampires? Didn't anybody ever go check that out? He said, as far as I know, no, they're still probably still there. And they're sleeping the sleep of the undead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they won't get themselves caught. They're way too smart.
Yeah.
They live between the worlds, so they will keep themselves an illusion for as long as they need to. Wow,
that's the interesting thing about that even the Nazis could not deal with vampires.
Well, it's interesting because, especially when we look at the dark arts that they were involved in, we spoke about that, the raw energy, etc. It would make sense to me that they would.
Well, your traditional vampire definitely was deep into the dark arts. They were demonically inclined to that, definitely. And I could see them, it's like two evils meeting together. One's a little bit stronger than the other. Things are going to happen, two loggerhead type things going on. So the evil of the Nazis met the evil of the vampires, and it didn't come out good, supposedly. And there, years later, I don't know if it was inspired by this supposed rumor of what happened, but there was an episode of a TV series. It was called The Night Gallery, and in the episode there is they show a castle in Transylvania, and there's like your typical vampire count, in it, and his little son says, "Daddy, what did you do during the war?" And the vampire smiles and he tells the story where they tried to take over his castle and they killed all the Nazis and all that because they were vampires, And I thought that had to be inspired definitely by that supposed rumor of what happened in the Black Forest of Germany. But to me, that's the interesting thing about Hollywood. The Hollywood writers, they're not prophets, okay? They're not prophetic. In some ways, people have accused them of being that way. But writers have to do deep research. And just like investigative researchers do, you have to get deep into go down the rabbit holes. You find this kind of stuff there, okay? Definitely when you do that.
Absolutely. And then they obviously create movies from that as well. using myths and legends, and obviously adding their own little spiciness to it as well. Yeah, for sure they would be doing that. Yeah. But what I was wanting to say to you earlier on is my late fiance, who was an Austrian, he actually started in his area when he was a youngster, him and his best friend, the mountain rescue team there. And they used to find very odd things in the forests. Obviously, you can imagine there's a lot of rescues in the mountains and in the forests there. But that's why that worm thing you spoke about, what's its name?
A tassel worm, yeah.
Tassel worm, yeah. He definitely spoke about that. And I can't remember the other stuff, but he told me some very fascinating stories about rescues and stuff that they would do there. And it's like kids. When kids get lost, it's crazy because they always walk up. And he noticed that kids will always walk up. Adults walk down a lot of the time. Kids walk up.
Well, here's another interesting thing that kind of ties into the tassel worm, and it's another interesting cryptid type thing in those mountains. They talk about the rock bolt slider. And this is supposed to be a dragon that looks like a pile of rocks. Okay. I mean, it's kind of camouflaged to look like rocks. And it lays up on the side of a mountain. And it looks just like an outcrop of rock. Okay. But what it does when it comes alive and it sees prey down below it, it'll slide down the mountain and eat those people up and then slide up the other side of another mountain and wait for some more prey to come along. That's called the rock bolt slider. And it supposedly looked like rock bolting down the side of the mountain. And I said that would definitely be another dragon to avoid in the mountains.
Wow. I mean, can you imagine that? Just see, but you look in Namibia, it's definitely the land of the dragons as well. I mean, you can see exactly the way the dunes in certain parts of the desert are shaped. Complete dragon. I mean, it's not even a question. And then, of course, you have the rock people.
Oh,
you
yeah.
go to area massive.
Yeah,
I mean, you feel tiny.
I've seen outcrops of rocks on mountain tops and stuff. They look very much like the bodies of dragons that are sort of like petrified looking things. And you have to wonder. And there's an old legend, Shanti, that dragons that go to sleep. Now, the legend of the dragon is that occasionally they will hibernate. They will go to sleep for centuries. That's why you get that saying is you better not poke a dragon. You don't wake a dragon, sleeping dragon, leave them alone. They supposedly go to sleep and they look like these rocks until you wake them up one day. People say, you respect the mountain because there may be something in the mountain that you do not want to wake up. And that's where dragons come in at. And dragons are another fascinating thing. That was one of the first, when I first started many, many years ago in my career of the paranormal and stuff, that was on the list because dragons are found everywhere. And you have different types of dragons, like the tassel worm we were talking about, or the rock bolt slider. You've got desert dragons, you've got mountain dragons, you've got swamp dragons. They're everywhere, that people have been, so have dragons. Okay, that's the way they go. We always take our dragons with us. And here's the interesting thing to me, the theory I formulated, that back before the year 1850, there was no such a word as dinosaur. That was made, the word dinosaur came along about 1850. Before that, everybody called them what? Dragons. And I think this is a racial memory we have. I think we want, although science says we didn't, I disagree with that. I think without a doubt in certain places like the Congo that we've talked about, they could still be there. They can still be out there in those swampy places.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, oh, wow. Thank you so much, Tanya. That's lovely. It's so interesting because, sorry, I didn't mean to put that on. It's so interesting, what you're saying, because personally, I've never ever connected with dinosaurs. It's not even been something that felt like a fairy tale to me, But when you're looking at dragons, now we're talking. Now we're talking. Yes, absolutely. Very
Well,
interesting.
one of my favorite quotes was by Herbert Spencer, who said that every myth and legend known to mankind is not without its authentic foundation. And that is so very, very true. Everything started somewhere with an actual event or an encounter of some sort or whatever. And definitely, without a doubt, I do not think all the dinosaurs died out in one day and that was it. They were all gone and we weren't around when that happened. I don't believe that without a doubt. But there are records of ancient people finding dinosaur bones, the skulls and the bones and all that, and saying, hey, that's a dragon,
Mm,
that's what's left of that dragon. But you have so many tales of people encountering these things in caves and in mountains and places like that. And that's the number one hangout for a dragon is a mountain. And the reason
yeah,
that is you got different kinds of dragons now. Your European dragon is the one with wings. The Chinese dragon does not have wings. Okay, it does not fly. Okay, but supposedly it's very supernatural and it can get around without that. It can actually float in the air. The Chinese dragon is fascinating, um, and it is a very spiritual thing for them. It connotes a lot of spirituality for the Chinese because of that. But the European dragon is more fearsome in that way. And if you go back even to the book of Job in the Bible, God describes the Leviathan. That is a dragon, my friends. With that description, fits it perfectly. It has smoke and fire coming out of its mouth and nostrils, and it is huge. It has wings. That Job was talking about a dragon, without a doubt.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
Well, I think, for those of us who watch these shows and programs, I think we realize more and more. Well, if you haven't yet, guys, then you're watching the wrong show. That's for sure. That there's a lot more around than just us three-dimensional humans. We're part of a much greater ecosystem, and it's very interesting to start seeing more and more what surfaces. And it's very interesting what you're saying about definitely the Black Forest and the forests in Germany. I've heard a lot of people speak about the stuff that
Yeah,
goes on there. It's
might
definitely
not.
not.
You might want to, pack some garlic with you if you go to vacation in the Black Forest. Okay, it might be a good idea to have some garlic or something with you in the
In
case.
Sweden
But
as well. In
when you get into studying about vampires and stuff like that, you go deep into folklore. Okay, I love
Yeah,
folklore. Okay, yeah, definitely. That's one of my repertoire there. And when you look at things like the preventive things against vampires, garlic, garlic was looked as very medicinal. It was considered a plant that could purify things because of the very strength of the garlic itself. And we do know to this day that definitely it has medicinal benefits to it. And you could also cleanse wounds with garlic and stuff like that. And the people knew this stuff back in the old days. The women that knew how to do the root stuff and the root work, and which eventually got mixed up with witchcraft somehow or another, and it's not really witchcraft. Okay, I call it woodcraft. That's what it is, basically, bushcraft or whatever name you want to give it that way. You know about the roots and plants and things that they do, and the ones that are poisonous and not poisonous. It's like when you go out to look for mushrooms or stuff, and you don't want to get the wrong mushrooms. So, they knew the stuff. They knew stuff like that. And it's unfortunately we write a lot of that off as superstition, but it has a lot of basis in fact to it. Just take for instance, the ancient Egyptians knew that the bark of the willow was a pain reliever. That's where we get aspirin at. That's where aspirin comes from.
mm,
And so that was known thousands of years ago in Egypt. So the knowledge of the old days is very valuable. And as Tolkien said, the old wives' tales should never be dismissed for their wisdom. How very true that is.
exactly. Exactly. It's so true. And so much more going on, as we know, right, Dennis? Wow. Super interesting. Thank you so much. And I think it's important that we look into the folklore and the myths and the legends, because as you were saying earlier on, it's not so much about the physical, what they're trying to say, but it's more also teaching, don't do bad, because if you do bad, then that's what's going to catch you. But then at the end of the day, I'm wondering where they came up with a type of, like if you look at what's the one in Germany, Krampf, what's his name in the Krampf? Come on, guys. I always
Boring.
no,
Yeah.
the that Christmas festival they have, where these monsters walk around the street.
Oh, well, yeah, you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the
Yeah,
Krampus. Krampus. Yeah,
Krampus.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
The Krampus.
yeah.
And stuff like that. Because if you look at how ugly that Krampus is, where the hell did they come up on ugly things like that to terrify
Oh,
children?
hey, that's very demonic looking in my book. He
Yeah,
definitely looked like a devil, and that's on purpose too. Okay, they were telling the kids, hey, you better straighten up, and be good, or Krampus is gonna get you. You don't have to worry about Santa Claus. Krampus,
exactly.
yeah.
But
And that was really a way to keep children in line. There were
I get it.
certain superstitions like that, Shanty, that warned you. If you step out of line and do the wrong thing, something bad's going to happen to you. You see that happen, especially in the Catholic religion. Catholic, they looked
Any
upon that.
religion,
Yeah, you didn't do certain
any,
things at certain times.
any
The Lent
religion.
and stuff like that. You had to commemorate things and do it the right way, or bad things will happen to you.
Well,
That's the
any
way
religion teaches you that if you don't comply with your jealous God, then you're going to hell. And now that
Mhm.
for me is like such a contradiction to begin
Well, you
with.
got to remember the main thing about religion, and I've talked to people about this, is a big difference between the actual kingdom of God and religion. Okay, because
Yeah.
religion is man made. It's a man made thing, and it was made usually as a method of control and guidance to people. Okay, you kind of put. Here's the way I look at it. They were saying with religion, you're putting God in a box, and we'll take him out and use him whenever we want to. Yeah, that's the way you kind of look at religion. That's the way they were doing it,
God's not
and it was
intervening
just
with person.
another means of control. That's basically what it was.
And they use it to control with fear. But there's a lot of cultures in Africa. What they do is that if someone does something wrong, instead of punishing them and beating them, they put the person in the middle of a circle, and then the family, friends, whoever it is, surrounds that person for days sometimes and reminds them of all the wonderful things that they are, that they've clearly forgotten. They will talk about little stories and experiencing, and remind the person who has gone off the trail of good, so to speak. And that's how you actually work with winning. That's how God likes to work. That's in my opinion. Not put Krampus there, because Krampus is now, for example, and there's lots. I think a little while ago, Jesse and I did a show as well on all these Christmas flippant things, that all these superstitions, because they really do control with fear. And that's why I say, where did anyone even know what Krampus looks like? So it's almost like putting that picture in the child's mind, because they're going to be kids that are fascinated by that. You got to believe it. I mean,
Oh yeah.
human being has the ability to go this way or that way, right? So they're already luring kids in with that and creating fears in that way. So it really is very destructive to rule with fear. And like the military, anything, school, boarding school, we taught to compete. And if you don't compete and don't comply, then you get
We've
punished.
got to
You get
remember.
detention.
We've got to remember, Shanty, that fear is a weapon. Okay, and the governments of the world realize that. Certain organizations know that very well. Fear can be used to control people and do things
Indeed.
they want to do. It's a weapon. Yeah. And I go with what FDR said. The only thing we have to fear is
Fear
fear
itself.
itself. Yeah, very true. How very true that is. Because fear, and I've told people this, especially in my profession and doing things. I say, people say, didn't you get scared of that situation, or wasn't you afraid and all that? I said, every person that walks this planet has fear. If somebody tells you I'm not scared, oh, they're lying, okay? Because everybody has fear of something at one time or another, whatever it may be. You need to get a handle on that fear, can control that fear, get it to work for you if necessary, okay? But don't let it work against you. Don't let it,
Mm.
keep you from doing what you need to do or whatever the situation is. You got to handle fear correctly when it pops up. And one of the ways to handle fear that I've always found is the fear of the unknown is a great fear in human history, okay? Well, once it's known, it takes a lot of that fear away from it, and you can handle it better. Okay. Once you know what it is you're facing, you understand it. But that fear of the unknown, I think H.P. Lovecraft said that, is one of the greatest fears of mankind. And but fear is there. You just got to handle it the right way.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
I always say fear, false evidence appearing real, because it is, love has no opposite. Love is complete. But if we want to look at how, let's say, when we're trying to understand transmutation and transformation, fear would kind of take the opposite of love in our layman's terms, so to speak. So fear, false evidence appearing real. Fear is there to deceive you. It's there to make you think and believe that you can't achieve something, or that it's the opposite of what it is. So that's what we've been controlled by fear. So we taught we need medicine. We need a government to control us. Big Daddy there watching us, telling us what to do. Excuse me, I have long ago learned how to conduct my own life in a very harmonious way, actually. So why do I need Cyril Ramaphosa, Mr. Cupcake President, who steals $500,000 and sticks it under his couch, and then someone sees him? I mean, that's our president. Why do I want that person telling me that I must have a COVID jab? Do you know what I mean? It's like ludicrous what we allow ourselves to go through. It's ludicrous. Why do we need Big Daddy? We don't. And when we discover that, we can then start building our own communities. We then start connecting with like-minded people who have similar ideas. Here in South Africa, there's a place called Orania. Now, I don't know, it's always in the news nowadays. Orania is privately owned land, okay, that was bought by white Afrikaners. So they have got their entire, it's like a little town or city. They've got their own currency. They've got their own food. They've got their own little ecosystem going there. Okay. And they're completely independent of pretty much the government. So they've managed to do this and build this place because the whole objective is for them to maintain the purity of the Afrikaner tradition.
It's diluted, yeah.
So in order to live there, you need to follow those values. Like you've got to be of that religion, whatever. And any crime committed, and it's the only place in South Africa that's 100% crime free, because any crime committed, you get kicked out. Tourists are allowed there, black people are allowed there, you're allowed to sleep over. It's not exclusively white. I don't qualify to go there because, hey, I'm way too much of a free thinker and I'm not religious.
There's a good psychological tactic, Shanti, that the Nazis were very good at doing, okay? And people need to understand this. They always accused others of what they themselves were guilty of. That way they covered it up. Like if I said, you did this, but I'm the one really doing it, but it's your fault, kind of a thing. It's a very narcissistic system, the way they were doing that, but it worked. It worked to their advantage. Yeah.
Well, what this does, for me, it works. They don't bother anyone. Now, everyone is up in arms, especially the African people. These get Orania, this, and I'm going, no. Why would you want to break down something that's working? Take the template they've used and apply that for your own community. If you feel the need that something is there that is working for someone else, use that method, but adjust it to work according to your needs. So I'm saying if there's a community of people, they peace loving, they love God very much, they crime free. It's like Germany, the same time like when Hitler cleaned up Berlin in the 1940s. It's the same type of genre of person living there. They don't like porn. They pure living. They love the Afrikaner tradition. There's no reason why they shouldn't enjoy it. It might not be for me, but it's for them. So rather than hating on people who are doing things that are working, take an example and make it work for you. That's how we're going to build our communities. That's how we're going to get out of this cage that we're in, right? Governed by the New World Order. We really have to we know there's 1% of them and 99% of us. So why are we shouting and screaming instead of and this is what I believe, Jesus said, turn the other cheek. Jesus didn't mean you got to get pummeled and become a martyr. No, you just don't give it energy. You don't give things you don't like energy, because that's how they fizzle out. So you focus on what you want, the things you want to build, get a few bright minds together, create your own Orania or whatever it is you want to create, and so the world, then we understand the tipping point, because everything gets to a point where it then tips in the other side direction. So really, that's what we need to do. This is how we save ourselves, not by deciding that somebody else has got to stop doing what they're doing because we don't like it. It doesn't work that way.
It's very interesting to note that, I mentioned the book of Job earlier. The one thing about Job, and in some ways it was self-defeating, he would sit there and say, what I greatly feared has come upon me. Okay. And that was sort of empowering it in my book, hey, I fear this, I fear that. That gives it power over you, and you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't. And I think one of the lessons that the vampire teaches us, and I think it's very important, we need to note this today and listen very closely to this. Whatever attacks you physically also attacks you spiritually most of the time. This happens. Absolutely, yeah. They're both connected. Yeah.
It's what we were talking about earlier on, is like, they'll start spiritually, emotionally, subtly drawing you in, right? And making you dependent on them basically for something. And then look, next thing, there's your blood in his mouth. Yeah, I agree. Speaking out words out loud is important. It's very true.
I've actually had incidences in my career, helping people in certain places that I've been in, that people have actually been attacked spiritually, and it shows up on them physically. I've had people come to me in the middle of this, I'm very sick in my stomach, or I can't think straight anymore, or I'm confused, I'm emotionally wrong. I know then those people sound to me like very much they are under spiritual attack, because whenever they attack you spiritually, it's going to show up on you physically, and vice versa. If somebody attacks you physically, it also hurts you spiritually. I don't care what you do to that person there, you're doing that to them. They're both connected. You can't separate them. What happens to one happens to the other. It's like a married couple. If you do something against the husband, it's against the wife too, or vice versa, whatever the situation is. That's the way it goes, and people need to realize that. And certain forces in this world that are bad and evil know about this. Okay, they know it well. Absolutely, they exploit it.
Yeah, they absolutely do, and they use it. They know how to use it against, those people who are unfortunately ignorant to how. These youngsters, and that's why I say just ignorance in terms of using all this technology and stuff like that. Use your technology, but don't let it take over your life. There's always that balance that we have to use your AI. AI is good in lots of ways, but don't let it take over your life, and don't let it be your boss. You are always your AI's boss. Mine knows. I go, hey, I'm the human. You do. I say you do.
Yeah.
So,
And I warn people, Shanty, this sounds freaky, but it's true. And I've had to, I'm just going off of the experiences I had my own self personally in this. You have to be very careful about who you let into your life, who you let touch you. I'm not talking about physically touch you. A lot of people that you're dealing with do not have your best interest at heart. Okay. They can wish you some very bad things, some of these people, and you need not let those people inside your spiritual bumper. I call it this. I think we all have been given a spiritual bumper, and animals too. You've got your personal space. There's a reason why you feel kind of funky when somebody gets in your personal space, I think our creator made this that way, and we have to be very careful who we let in that space or what we let in that space, because it can very badly affect us if we're not careful. I've had actually, if I were, a lot of people don't know this. If I were a warlock and I wanted to put a spell on you, I can first speak that spell in my hand and touch you. You got the spell, okay? But I got to touch you with it. That's the way that works. We call that transference in witchcraft, okay? It's a very prevalent thing. Be very careful who you shake hands with. Okay, you may be shaking hands with the devil. You never know, and they can do bad things to you. So you have to be very aware of where you're at, what you're dealing with, and what you let into your life. Not just shaking hands with people. You got to be careful what you bring into your life and then bring into your home and bring into your mind. All of these things can be very adverse to you if you're not careful. You got to be cautious. I'm not trying to tell you to live your life with fear. No. Fear has to be handled, but you need to be caught. We call that being smart. Okay, you got to be smart, because life, if you're stupid, is a lot harder on you. Okay, so be smart and be wary of these things and know what they can do to you. Yeah.
Dennis, thank you so much. And on that note, we're going to be smart, aren't we? And again, I wanted to say Tanya Lene, 999. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your super sticker this evening. Really appreciate that. Dennis, thank you so much. And to everybody for watching and in the chats and connecting and talking, and thank you so much. Really appreciate your input. Always do. Like, share, subscribe. Let's get this information out there. Dennis, is there anything you want to maybe just share with anyone about where people can find you? Anything you're up to this week? Here's your show, your website. So yeah, anything that you want to say in closing?
Come on over to Hunting the Shadows channel on YouTube. That's where I hang out at. I have 4 shows going on now. On Monday mornings, I have Monday Morning Monsters, nothing but cryptids, wall-to-wall cryptids. We talk cryptids on Monday mornings. And then Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Hunting the Shadows. And then Friday night, we have Paranormal Point of View at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And now Saturday, I'm beginning a series of lectures, online lectures from I call it the supernatural spectrum. We're going to be talking about supernatural creatures, what their makeup are, how to, fight against them if you need to, or whatever the situation. We're going to be doing those every Saturday night at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My books are available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Look up the author, Dennis W. Carroll. I have a paranormal consultation service. If you need to get in touch with me about anything, paranormal problem, or you just want to tell a story, report something, whatever, I'm open to that. You might show up in my next book. You never know. But you can contact me at DennisWCarroll.com.
There we go, DennisCarroll.com and at gmail.com. Is that yours there? Dennis W. Carroll, that's right. It's on the bottom of the screen. I just want to make sure that there was not a mistake. That's right.
That's
Okay.
Dennis W. Carroll. I had to put a W in there. There's another Dennis Carroll, but he plays football in Australia, and I don't do that.
How dare you have your name?
Yeah, here's my name, Dennis Carroll. So I put the W in there. That kind of keeps us separate.
Well, you should go. You should put your name as Doc Dennis Carroll. You see, you're a Doc Dennis.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, take it easy. God bless you all. It's Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. Yes, join me for Drop In with Shanti. If you watched last week's Drop In, we had the formatting factory. I'm doing a whole lot of stuff from that channel because moving into Sweden and going to be looking at Ericsson and all of that stuff. And who are they really? You know, the Swedes are hiding there in Sweden, but there's lots of dodgy things going on there. And hey, make no mistake, I love the Swedes. I have very, very good Swedish friends, and I have the best times with Swedish people. But I also know that, Sweden, there's stuff going on there. So we're going to start sneaking a little peek in that. So join me for Drop In with Shanti. That'll be 4 o'clock tomorrow, South African time, Central Africa time, which is 3.5 sorry, 3.5 hours earlier than what it is now, whatever time that is for you. And then Sherry Sweeney tomorrow evening, amazing. She's worked with Jerry Marzinski and talking about, she's had also the invasive thoughts, pretty much like Dr. Jerry, and really just talking about mental health, wellness, stuff like that. Fantastic. And I shall see you then. I don't think I see you on Saturday. No, I don't see you on Saturday. Jerry Marzinski is not here. So I will see you then next week again, guys. God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves. And yeah, stay cool, man. Just be cool. Mwah.